That's my secret, Cat. I'm always angry.
Alright. I ran out of patience. On the roost!
Hey everyone, Captain, big fan of Spider-Man.
Avengers! Assemble.
Hello, Peter.
Hello and welcome back to the Infinity Saga and Beyond, an MCU fan podcast where we will be talking the 31st film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I am Jordan Wiegand, and as always, with me when it comes to characters like Doctor Strange and Ant-Man, it's Jack Sewpersaud. How are you today, Jack?
Very good. Very excited to have watched this movie, and I'm going to spoil a little bit. I really liked it. That's it. That's the bold statement to start out with. But Ant-Man's one of my favorite characters. I think my second favorite comic book character, specifically Scott Lang's Ant-Man. Hank Pym's Ant-Man is a little bit more messed up, but Scott Lang, great guy. So of course I was super excited for this movie.
Yeah, it's I really liked it as well. We might be the only people that did. When we're looking at we'll talk about it at certain points when we're looking at the Rotten Tomatoes scores, when we're looking at the cinema score, what's the one that does like the median of scores, Metacritic scores, all that stuff. I mean, box office wise, it's doing okay. I mean, it's probably going to be the highest Ant-Man opening, which is, I think Ant-Man and the Wasp was 95 million. This is right now, as of 2 hours ago, tracking for 100 million on the third day. But it is a 4-day weekend, so 115 4 days, what they're projecting right now. Those can change from when we're recording. But yeah, so hey, if you did not like this movie, this podcast episode probably not going to be for you, because we're probably going to be gushing over this movie, and you're probably going to be screaming at your car as you're driving, like, what did they watch? But opinions, right? That's how these go. So we're gonna dive into it here, but before we do, I'm gonna give the synopsis. This is from, I think, the Marvel.com website is where I grabbed this from. It is in the film, which officially kicks off Phase 5 of the MCU. Superhero partner Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne return to continue their adventures as Ant-Man and the Wasp. Together with Hope's parents, Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne, the family finds themselves exploring the quantum realm, interacting with strange new creatures, and embarking on an adventure that will push them beyond the limits of what they thought was possible. Jonathan Majors joins the adventure as Kang. And this was, of course, written by Jeff Loveness, directed by Peyton Reed, and it was February 17th, 2023 in theaters. So I guess, Jack, you said you really liked it. Give us a little bit more before we dive into the plot here of just what really worked for you in this movie.
Yeah, well, I think one thing that really struck me with this movie is, one, the visuals. I know some people are going to complain and say it's a CGI fest with the visuals, but I thought it looked absolutely stunning. I watched people review it and say it looked weird in some parts. I couldn't see where it did, and when it did, I think it's kind of supposed to look weird. It's a quantum realm movie, so it can look a little weird. I thought it. I know a lot of people have been saying it's like a Star Wars type movie. It felt like almost Mass Effect like to me. Is what I'd kind of liken it to. It felt like it gave off some of those kinds of vibes with the character designs. Star Wars, Mass Effect, kind of in that kind of sci-fi realm. And the main thing that I really enjoyed about this, besides obviously the great performances by all of the main actors, was this is the most comic booky Ant-Man movie. And I said that about Doctor Strange too. And I like when comic book movies acknowledge that they're comic book movies and they actually lean into that. They're not afraid to do the weird stuff. And it felt like there's the Ant-Man comic run from 2015 that I think we've both read, Jordan, and it feels like a good adaptation of that, where like Scott is kind of goofy. He's cutting into like the villain monologues and stuff like that, and I think that serves its purpose really well. It feels like something that you could see being written in a comic book, and this being like an arc in a comic book. And for that, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think when I saw the Star Wars complaint, because a lot of people used it as a negative when I was looking at stuff before going in, I was like, one, I don't understand how that's a negative. I like Star Wars, so to me, that's a plus if it feels like a Star Wars movie. But I got it. Like, I feel like if you like or love the Star Wars prequels, I think you'll like or love this movie, because to me it feels very prequel-esque. The CGI, you could say, even there, but they have like a little cantina type scene, right, with the Bill Murray inclusion into this. You have characters like the Blob guy, Vaz is his name. You get characters like that. You get that even reminded me a bit of the sequels too. The scene where they're storming Kang's area reminded me of them storming the Exegol in Rise of Skywalker. Actually, maybe it's because of the clouds, like, of Exegol, and kind of like the clouds of the quantum realm are similarly produced or something, but it had that same sort of vibe to me. Yeah, so I would say I can kind of see the similarities there. For me, I think that's great. For others, I guess I can kind of see where it might go wrong for them. I think some people, and I don't know why they would think this, there were some complaints that this loses the grounded nature of the Ant-Man franchise. Well, the Ant-Man franchise had two of those movies. It's fine to shake things up for a third one. Also, when you have the name Quantumania, I don't know why you'd be expecting to get anything other than the quantum realm. So for me, I wasn't in expecting what we got, and I liked it. And I think one thing that really helps, and one thing that could have made this movie fall really flat, is if Jonathan Majors is not as good as he is. But since he's phenomenal, I think he helps carry some of this quantum stuff, because his performance, I think, is pretty spectacular. For like I said, any other actor playing this role might ham it up more and might not be as threatening. You might not be buying the threatening nature of Kang when he's threatening Cassie and telling Scott, "You're gonna do this for me." And so I think that's one of the reasons why it really worked for me too. It's just Jonathan Majors, I think, is just really good in this movie. We're in good hands.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, Jonathan Majors. I mean, he was great in Loki when we saw him as He Who Remains, but like in this one, just every single scene he's in, he just has like this sense of gravitas around him, where the energy he brings into any shot or scene he's in is just intense. He is perfect to be like this threatening guy who has basically limitless power theoretically, right? And he just there's a few scenes in there where he doesn't even do anything like to attack anyone, and you just feel like he's just menacing. And I think he's absolutely fantastic in this. I can't wait to see more of him throughout Phase 5 and 6. And also, it looks like we're going to see him pretty soon in Loki season 2.
Yeah,
So
the one thing that really I think dragged this movie down for me, because like I said, I really liked it. It's not like I don't love it. It's really like, I don't know what that means. I think I have this second out of the Ant-Man movies, but what dragged it down for me a bit is how long it takes to get to Kang. And they do something that annoys me in every TV show and every movie that I ever see, which is when they ask Janet a question a million times, and she's like, I can't tell you for your own safety. I can't tell you for your own safety. Like, multiple times. And I'm like, I already know the answer because I already know Kang's on the poster. So just say it. Like, that's the kind of stuff that, like, upsets me. Not like upsets like I'm like fuming, but like, where I'm like, just get there. Like, just get there. Like, let's get to Kang. I think the flashback that she tells could have probably happened sooner, and then it doesn't have to do that and then transition right to, I think it transitions almost right then to Kang walking in with Ant-Man. So they probably could have done that without doing too much. The Bill Murray part almost feels pointless at a time. I don't know if he was supposed to have a bigger role, because he gets like eaten like pretty quick. Or if it was always supposed to be a cameo, or like how that was supposed to be. But that's kind of like the one thing for this movie that I'm like, I remember watching it sitting in the theater, like, I'm waiting for Kang. Are you going to show me Kang? We're already like an hour in. Are we getting Kang? Like, this movie's only 2 hours long. So I was a little worried there, but then he, is in the movie like the rest of the time.
Yeah, I can see some of that. Like the pacing maybe in the first act is a little slower. I think for me, I really liked that they withheld that personally, because I really enjoyed the tension that it creates. Like, we know Kane's in this movie, and every time that gets delayed, I'm really looking forward to when they show him. And then when he comes in for this first real scene with where he's kind of like getting Scott to do this heist for him, it feels all the more rewarding to see his acting pay off, and how his character just enters that room. I enjoyed that. I think the Bill Murray part is kind of interesting because it fills out kind of like some of Janet's backstory, which is kind of cool, but also,
yeah, we know he's human in all the right ways.
yeah,
right?
But also like that he was, a freedom fighter that kind of got corrupted into joining Kang's.
Yes.
I get not quite dynasty, because that's not until 2025, but his empire.
Yeah, I would not be shocked if they actually push back Kang's Dynasty and Secret Wars at this point, with the way that they're pushing some of this stuff. Here's my theory, and a lot of people's theories, by the way, is, the guy who's no longer in power at Disney, Bob Chapek, was probably wanting them to push these out a little sooner and a little faster because they make so much money. Because Bob Iger's come in and pretty much said, we're slowing down this stuff. So I think Iger, Iger's talked about more quality over quantity. We saw him do that with Star Wars when he realized they flubbed it with putting, Solo only 6 months after Last Jedi, and it kind of, the appetite wasn't there for it as much, that he is like, all right, we're going to slow it down, and we're going to focus on the TV side of things. So I think that I would not be shocked. We already kind of saw Secret Wars go from 6 months away from Kang Dynasty to a full year. I wouldn't be shocked if they push it and maybe even make Secret Wars a 2-parter or something like that. I don't know. We'll see. Everybody's freaking out now, of course, because Jeff Loveness is writing. Which one is he writing?
Kang? He's writing Kang Dynasty.
I think he's writing Kang.
Yeah. Because Michael Waldron's
and then
writing
somebody
Secret
else.
Wars.
Oh, Waldron. Michael Waldron's, and people are freaking out about that too. Yes. So you know, one thing that I really liked at the beginning of this movie, though, and I wish we got more of. I know I was just talking about hurrying it up for Kang, but what I wish we got more of the real world stuff at the beginning and getting Scott as a celebrity. I thought that was really interesting. You know, him high fiving the kid with the Ant-Man backpack and him doing his book readings and listening to his audiobook on tape. Like that kind of stuff I thought was really fun. And I thought they would explore more of that. But, you know, one thing I do know, by the way, because I do follow a lot of this stuff when I probably shouldn't. One thing I do know is that like that whole ending of Scott in the real world was reshot. That was all stuff that was filmed like a month ago.
Ooh.
Because they recently refilmed stuff on that street, and her Evangeline Lilly's hair matches what she was doing during the press stuff. They didn't even put like her other look on her. So all of that stuff was like reshot. And there was rumors that originally this movie was supposed to end with them stuck in the quantum realm. Her and Scott, which to me, I thought that was going to be true. I'm watching it. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, that is true. But it makes sense that it's not, because Cassie has already developed a way to communicate with the quantum realm. So it makes sense for her to be able to just reopen the portal. So I think if they had ended with them stuck, I would have been left with, well, couldn't she just do what they had done to get in there and get them back? You know, so like, so it made sense, you know, in the sense of I wonder if they thought about that after they had it done and they're like, you know what, we got to refilm this part because this doesn't make sense.
I mean, also like Ant-Man's already been stuck in the quantum realm before. It's been done. He got stuck in there at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp. So why end it the same way? I think it makes
that
more
would have been
sense.
weird.
Yeah, it makes more sense, you know. And also, you know, whenever they do finally put out the Young Avengers, I think it you know, I can see some cool stuff between like Cassie and Iron and Riri Williams kind of like collaborating over some tech stuff like that. I'm very excited for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you know, I actually really, people said this ending was really abrupt, but I really liked the ending here where Scott is kind of back to his happy-go-lucky self, and then it dawns on him that he remembers something Kang said, you know, about him kind of staving off something worse. And then you get, I really liked when he's like, it's probably fine, right? Like, you know, that part was funny, but then it kind of ends on this somber type, maybe everything's not great. And I thought that was a cool way to end, especially an Ant-Man film. Pre-credits, you know, because like Ant-Man and the Wasp kind of ends that way after credits when he's stuck in there. But pre-credit wise, it was kind of like a happy ending of Ant-Man and the Wasp. And this one kind of ends, I think, you know, where it's like not a imminent danger, right? It is something that he will have to go on with his life for a bit. But when it comes back, you know, he's going to be like, oh crap, this is what Kang was talking about. And he might even be able to fill in the other Avengers. We might get a reference to this movie, of course, in the other Avenger films when,
I mean, how can you not?
He says, no, I've dealt with this guy. I dealt with this guy before, right? Like that's, I know what he does, and he'll probably be the one to fill us in on that. Like how, Bruce filled us in on Thanos, at the beginning of Infinity War.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I really like the ending as well. That's one of those scenes where it immediately felt like something you'd see at like the end of a comic book, like where he's like, "Wow, I saved the day and everything's great," and then just like remembering back and then just going like, "Nah, it's probably fine." That feels like comic book Scott Lang right there, and that I absolutely adored.
Felt like Twilight Zone for me, where you're like, everything's fine, but not.
Yeah.
You know, we've gone all this time so far, and we have not talked about MODOK. So let's talk about MODOK, who people said this is some of the worst CGI they've ever seen. I thought it looked fine, actually, and this is how MODOK looks. So I was like, people said this would replace the floating head from Thor: Love and Thunder as the worst CGI they've ever seen. Now, I mean, he looks weird because I think he looks weird because one, Corey Stoll has like a bigger nose, and it has to get squashed for the MODOK look, and I think that's why he kind of looks so weird. Maybe they could have shrunken his face on there, but I don't know. It's MODOK. He is exactly what his comic book self is, so I enjoyed that as
Yeah,
well.
exactly. Like MODOK should look goofy. He should. He is
Yeah.
a floating head with tiny arms and tiny legs. Like if he didn't look goofy, I would have been more upset. I would have been upset if he didn't look goofy, because that's what he's supposed to be. He's supposed in this movie. He's supposed to be kind of like comic relief. Like it's supposed to be funny when he takes off the mask, and then it's just like this face. And in my theater, everyone anytime that came up just like laughed, because it's funny. He's supposed to
Yeah.
look goofy. And if anyone was like, oh, MODOK should have looked more realistic, how do you make a floating giant head with tiny legs and tiny arms look realistic? That you don't. That's it. It's not supposed to look realistic because it's not.
I think people wanted him to be like scary. Like I think that's what they wanted, but he's just not.
MODOK's
Like
not even
he's
scary
just
in
not that
anything
type of
else.
character.
He's not scary in any other media.
Right.
He's kind
I
of
would say maybe they did him very well in the Avengers game that I played. Like they did him pretty well, and he looks really good in it. But I don't know how that would translate to this. What I do like is that they made it Darren, and that we got closure on something from the first movie. Like I thought that was all really good.
yeah. I thought it was fantastic. I also one of my favorite parts with him. I mean, there was so much. There was actually a lot of good parts with him. I thought he was like one of the highlights of the movie as well. I love when he's introducing himself, and then Scott like interrupts his story to say like, "Oh, MODOK, it's an acronym, but it really should be MODOFK," which I think is
Yes.
amazing, and again feels very much like comic books. Great, and just it was like a perfect delivery, and it feels like a perfect Ant-Man kind of joke. This movie kept a lot of the
Yes. Yeah.
humor from those first two, which I really appreciated. I'm glad it went serious when it needed to, but I'm also glad that it kept kind of that light humor that the Ant-Man movies have really hammered in for the past two entries.
Yeah, I thought it did well with the humor being at appropriate moments. Like not a lot of humor coming from Kang or his storyline. It's all coming from like MODOK. It's coming from the Bill Murray aspect of it, right? It's coming from the giant ants. Like it's coming from that stuff and not the villain.
It's coming from Feb.
For people that complained about, maybe the overuse of jokes in Love and Thunder, I felt like this was a step in the right direction. If you're somebody that was like too many jokes in Love and Thunder, I thought this one didn't have that many. I mean, it still did it I think they spaced them out, is my point, I guess. I think they spaced out these jokes a little easier. I mean, we even got to see the Quantum Realm's ass, right? We got to see MODOK's butt.
Yeah. I thought like I thought all the humor worked really well. I liked how each character got like a chance to kind of like shine with jokes. I really liked Hank's joke with when he brings in the ants, and he's like, I know socialism is a really charged word, but we have a thing or two to learn from the ants. I thought that was a good funny. I thought that was a good line, and I felt like maybe one complaint that I had was that Hank felt more like a comic relief character rather than like an actual main character within the story. But I also think that it was definitely more of a story for Janet and Kang more than it was for like uh Hank to really be in there. He just happened to be in there at the same time, and I mean he's important in the final
Yeah, they didn't
battle.
know what to do with Hank.
Yeah. I think they used him well in they used him well in the final battle with being able to like communicate with the ants and all of that. I thought that was great, and also the fact that like the ants traveled through time and created a society like far more advanced, like thousands of years into the future with technology. I think that was
A
kind of
level
like
2 civilization.
yeah, I think that's just a creative kind of way to loop that in, because we see the ants all go in like very intentionally in that first scene where everything's getting sucked into this portal. They show the ants individually getting sucked in, so it has that payoff for that.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, and it kind of gives the original Ant-Man something like this big triumphant moment with the large ants. But I felt like other than that, they didn't really know what to do with him in the sense of he's mostly on the ride, right? He's mostly just there for the ride. I don't think I don't know if you saw I guess it was during the red carpet or something, but they asked Michael Douglas if he would want to come back for a fourth one. He said, if I get to die.
Yeah,
Like, I think he's done with them. I
that
think he's over it.
that's a Harrison Ford answer right there.
Yes. But I think what set them in the direction of not knowing what to do with him is that Hank is like approving of Scott now, right? Like he read Scott's book. He's not like on Scott's ass about stuff. So it was a different direction for the character, and they just were like, yeah, we don't really know what to do with that. So we're we're gonna leave them alone there. But I think another downside of this, if you're somebody that is a Wasp fan, or specifically a Hope Van Dyne fan, is again she didn't really have much to do, and the Wasp in the title is almost more referencing Janet, because it is a heavily Janet featured movie, with her relationship with Kang, which I liked. I like giving Michelle Pfeiffer more stuff to do, but it just seems like again Hope was not really much to do. I'm wondering if they could have maybe have done something else with this, where not that I'm going to try to fix this movie or something, but I'm thinking like, was there a way to maybe keep some of the characters out of the quantum realm instead of being separated, and then having Janet be with Scott some of the time? Like that would have been a weird dynamic to have. Like that could have been cool. I don't know. But what happened is we had 5 characters go in the quantum realm, and really only Scott and Scott and Janet were like really the focus of it. Cassie even kind of got a little lost in the shuffle once she got captured. I felt like she was good. Like she had stuff to do with the rebels, but once she was captured, there was moments where we didn't even see her.
I I think that she I liked it the way they did it, because it gave us time to focus on the two main relationships this movie wanted to talk about, which is Kane and Janet's dynamic and how that all went down, and then Scott and Cassie. And you get kind of this whole thing throughout it, like where Cassie has looked up to her dad her whole life for going out and like looking out for other people and doing things to help people. And she does that. Like, you know, I was intrigued by the trailer when, she was coming out of prison. Like what was that for? And it's for, trying to help people against police trying to clear out a homeless encampment. I think like,
Not just homeless people, people displaced by the
Right.
snap. These are people that lost their homes when they came back from the blip.
That's
So,
right. Yeah.
something that's not even their fault. Like, I mean, not that homelessness is anybody's fault,
Mhm.
but I mean, like, this is something tied to what the Avengers have done,
Yeah. And
what her father had done, bringing people back.
right. And so the whole idea of, you know, she wants her dad to be this person again to help people. And so, I think throughout the like getting to see that dynamic play out in, when they're in this little displaced village in the quantum realm. And that scene and how they get embedded in that sort of conflict, and then seeing how it continues to advance throughout that. And I also liked in the third act Cassie getting to do her own stuff in there and show, like, that she knows kind of what she's doing, she can handle herself. And I really liked the callback to Civil War with when she goes big and then goes back down, and she's like, I could really go for a lime slice instead of the orange slice that time. But I think that's a good kind of, a good callback to something that, you don't necessarily miss it. Like, you don't care about if you didn't get it, it doesn't detract from anything. But if you got it, it's like an I understood that reference type moment.
Yeah, the citrus,
Yeah.
right? It makes you, apparently when you go large with the pin particles, it makes you like crave citrus for whatever reason. But yeah, I did like that callback. I also liked I forget who it was that said it. Was it Cassie when she said about fighting Captain America? And Scott's like, I wouldn't fight Captain
Yeah.
America. I fought with Captain America. Like, I'm not a psycho. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna I'm not gonna fight Captain America. That was fun. Let's see here. So yeah, at the end, there's people that saying that there's no arc for some of these characters, but I felt like there's a clear arc with Cassie and Scott and their relationship, and also Cassie inspiring Scott to help people again. Is, her making that message is really inspiring to Scott. He's proud of her. He was kind of like, I guess you could say, quote unquote, retired at that point. He wasn't trying to be a superhero at that point anymore. And I think that's a fine arc. It doesn't have to be a huge arc. It's just about their dynamic and him, her inspiring him to be Ant-Man again. And, now he goes back out there. He knows that Kang is out there, or possibly. So I guess let's talk about that. I thought he I thought he had died, but I was like, well, they didn't actually show him die. And Scott says, is he dead? And then I thought that's how they wanted us to feel. But then the end credit scene's like, oh no, that one's dead. And I'm like, which is it? I'm assuming that one's not actually dead, and he'll come around at some point, or maybe he is dead, and maybe, maybe the rest of the Kangs we meet are the Kangs that we see at the end here. But what's your thoughts on the Kang we met in this movie? Is he alive or dead by the time we exit the film?
I mean, I'm not sure if he's dead. I feel like maybe he's just trapped inside that core. I because I feel like I'm pretty sure I saw him get like sucked into that core, not like he didn't like explode into it, right? Like, so maybe he just shrunk down to another lower level of the quantum realm. And that's possible because we saw Scott and Hope do that to retrieve this. So maybe he's still alive down there. I don't know how he would get out of there, but I feel like, maybe that whole back and forth thing is kind of to, mislead the audience and like keep some things under wraps with things, right? so we think like, is he dead or alive? And with all these different sources coming into it, who knows? And I mean, there are, as we see, there are literally infinite versions of Kang. So I think whatever I think whatever one we get will be just as threatening as the Kang we saw in this movie.
Yeah, there's a theory I read going around now where like because the core is made out of some sort of multiversal engine or something that he name dropped, that maybe it sucked him into there and he ends up becoming the Beyonder in Secret Wars, and he is, still the main villain of this saga, the same Kang. Or it could just be that, the ones we see at the end are now going to. So let's clarify. The one that we followed this whole film was exiled from
The Council of Kangs.
the multiverse because of the Council of Kangs, right? Which is a comic thing. If people are not sure, if you're like, why are all these Kangs together? There's a Council of Kangs, just like there's like a Council of Reed Richards as well, or but so there's people that love having the multiverse are they love meeting up with themselves. But so we have the Council of Kangs. They exile him for, I guess, being just a jerk, right? And wanting to control everything. He was like the worst one, I guess, that they decided to send off here. But we also know from Loki that He Who Remains originally had won the war and had been able to prune the branches to keep all of those Kangs from ever coming because he feared for what they could do. And now, since He Who Remains was killed, we now know that they're running rampant, right? All of these Kangs are now everywhere. So yeah, I mean, so he's exiled because of that, and he ends up either dead or alive. We don't know. I guess we'll find out. I just find it weird when the council says he's dead, because I feel like they would know, because they have access to all these timelines. Like, I feel like they would know somehow, but again, he could just be really shrunk down. We saw that's what I was kind of curious about, because we saw our characters go into that core as well. So I mean, obviously you can shrink down into the core. But just something I want to point out here: these end credit scene Kangs that are talking here. We've got Immortus, that's the one with the really tall hat, and we got Rama Tut, that is the one that looks like a pharaoh, Egyptian pharaoh. And we got a third Kang. I'm not sure who this one's supposed to be. Some people are speculating Scarlet Centurion, which is another version of Kang. Needless to say, these are probably going to be Kangs that we see in the future. I like that Jonathan Majors kind of tries to differentiate them by their voices. I saw some people complaining about his accent for those. I'm sure look, they probably filmed this scene a month ago as well. That's how they do at the end credit scenes. I'm sure if he has more time with these characters, these versions of them will be better, I'm sure. But I was really pumped to see Immortus and Rama Tut for sure. If people are not familiar with Rama Tut, he was actually the first version of Kang to ever be in comics, and they retconned him to be Kang. He was originally just his own villain until they retconned that. But Jack, your thoughts on the first end credit scene that we got here?
It was very cool. It was very cool. I thought, like, seeing this. At first, I was like, wait, when it first opens on the scene of the actual council area, and I see all the platforms, I'm like, there's no way they did this. There's no way they did it, but they did do it. They actually introduced the entire Council of Kangs, and I loved seeing this. And if people were complaining about like the multiverse not feeling like it has enough like variation in it or anything like that, all the complaints after Doctor Strange 2 were like, oh, we haven't seen that many universes. We literally just saw thousands of Kangs from different universes. Like, if that doesn't confirm anything about the multiverse, then I don't know what does. But I like, as they're like going through all this, like each of the Kangs, like you can tell they have like a distinct personality as well, which makes sense because it's the multiverse, infinite numbers of possibilities. And I am very excited for them to continue using that sort of that sort of idea going forward, and seeing all of these like staple variants of Kang, that we've gotten throughout other media. Very cool to see. I really enjoyed that. My dad, who I watched it with, was like, I don't get it. and I was like, no, it's because now they see Earth and that timeline of Earth specifically as a threat. Because if Ant-Man can supposedly kill this Kang that they never could, that they had to exile, suddenly that's a threat. And I think like it's so I feel like it's really weird because some of the reviews I got I read were like they're doing too much to set up the next phase, or they're not being clear enough as to where the next phase is going. How can you be any more clear than what that first end credits scene was saying? Like they say exactly why they're assembling the Council of Kangs, because they see this timeline as a threat. And that's and I see exactly how Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars can fall into place there. Like I don't think they could have made a more like concrete blueprint than what they did without giving too many fun details away.
What we're gonna get in the build up to Kang Dynasty is we're gonna get incursions. We're gonna get more incursions. We've heard it a few times. And if people are not familiar with Secret Wars, which is what we're building to, the Jonathan Hickman run of incursions had them, of the Secret Wars, had incursions kind of fusing, like, the wall between worlds, like we kind of seen, being a little loose, then the worlds colliding. And in Secret Wars, they have to kind of fight to save their version of Earth. In the comics, it was Earth 616 facing off against the Ultimate Universe, and which is famous for having Nick Fury look like Samuel Jackson. It's also famous for Miles Morales being introduced, those type of things. And the way that they did it in the comics is once they fused, all of a sudden Miles is in the 616 universe, and that's the Earth that won, right? So the main continuity continued forward, and they were able to take the best stuff from the Ultimate Universe and throw it into the main universe. That was their way of getting Miles into main continuity and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not saying we'll see that here, but there's rumors, there's theories that maybe the incursion that we're going to see at some point is Earth 838 from Multiverse of Madness, and R616 in the films, maybe being the ones that have to battle it out. Not sure, though, because most of those characters died in Multiverse of Madness. I'm not sure if there's much of an Avengers team to even battle over there. So we'll see. But I think that could be fun. Like, I think that could be how Secret Wars plays out. Because, people, I don't know if we're going to get this, but people want Robert Downey Jr. to come back. People want Hugh Jackman. That's a possibility now that he's in Deadpool. I think that is a possibility for sure. And I think people want, of course, Toby and Andrew to come back, which they may, I guess. It sounds like both of them want to play the character again when asked about it in interviews. So they're not like Michael Douglas, where they're like, just kill me if I have to come back. Like they're like, yes, we'll come back, because they had a great experience on No Way Home. So, possibility that's what we could be getting for Secret Wars. What my question is, what the hell is Kang Dynasty then, right? What are we building to in Kang Dynasty that then spins off into Secret Wars? And that's what I'm looking forward to a lot. Is it this Council of Kangs? Are they the Kang Dynasty? Or is it another Kang that has risen up and has maybe dispatched of the council to make him super threatening. I don't know. That's the kind of thing that what is Kang Dynasty going to detail? I guess we'll find out from Jeff Loveness when he writes it. But I don't know. We might only have 2 years till then if it doesn't get pushed back. But I'm super excited for it. But you know what? There's going to be other crumbs because we're going to get Loki season 2, and that transitioned us into the second end credit scene, which I did not see coming. When I saw Victor Timely and I saw Kang, I was like, all right, this is cool. Victor Timely is, of course, if people don't know, is another variant of Kang. So in the comics, in 1901, he was an inventor named Victor Timely. He founds the town of Timely, Wisconsin. He's like the first mayor of it. He transfers the city into a technological marvel. But what happened is he conquered everything within 100 light years of Earth. And so he attacked his ancestors' native world in the modern age, which was like the 1960s. He lost to the Avengers, and he travels back to 1901 and kind of sets up this whole new identity. So, not saying that's where they're going with it in Loki, but just cool that we're getting Victor Timely. That I was like, oh, cool. They're just setting up that he's like another variant out there. And then we see Loki in the crowd. We see Mobius in the crowd, which I thought was awesome. And I assume this is kind of like the end credit scene to Ant-Man 1, that this is probably a scene lifted right out of the show. Is that what you would guess as well here?
That's my guess. And probably from, a little bit into the show, too, because when Loki season 1 ends, Mobius does not know who Loki is. So this is definitely from a little bit into the show, at least. But yeah, I'd imagine that it's from the show.
Yeah, it makes me wonder how large of a role he's going to have. Of course, at the end credit scene of Loki season 1, we see that Kang has taken over the TVA. So he has his whole, statues of himself and all that. We have Mobius, like you said, not remembering him. It's like almost like he ended up in a different timeline. And with that, we see them in suits in this scene, right? To try to fit in.
Yeah.
I almost feel like if you watch the Disney Plus trailers for 2023, there are few scenes of showing them in suits outside in a like alley or street. And I'm thinking it might be from the same episodes. I'll have to double check that. But that's my thought process. But the good news is we're getting more Jonathan Majors in Loki season 2. And I really wonder what that season's going to be about. Is it just about toppling another Kang who's in charge of the TVA now? Like, we also have Sylvie, who was kind of, she probably won't remember Loki either, maybe, because once she killed He Who Remains, or is she in charge of the He Who Remains desk now? Like, I don't know. There's some questions I have about Loki season 2. But it's also really cool to know that we're getting a second season of a Disney Plus show, which we have not had yet for Marvel. So being able to, like, it was fun to like see them show up in that end credit scene.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have What If season 2 soon, I think. But
yeah, I'm thinking that gets pushed to next year at this point, unfortunately.
I really liked What If.
Yeah, I think with them spacing it, I don't know though, because they also have Spider-Man freshman year that's complete too. So I guess that's going to be pushed to next year as well. Apparently the X-Men 97 is still on track for this year, but there was I think Variety or Hollywood Reporter said that at this point they think the only other shows we're getting this year are Secret Invasion and Loki season 2, and that they've pushed Echo back to next year. So some people think maybe Daredevil's pushed to 2025 and Agatha as well. Might be. Yeah, they're filming those now, by the way.
Yeah,
So
I
we might be waiting a long time.
we'll see. We'll see about it. I think that there's a chance maybe that Echo still comes out towards like the end of this year, kind of like mid-December kind of thing, but transfers into the next
Right.
year. But I think it's
A
not
Book of Boba Fett, where it's
Yeah.
December 29th or whatever.
right. Like I think something kind of like that, where we'll start seeing it in 2023, but it'll finish in 2024, which I don't think it's necessarily bad. I think it will be a little bit strange to go back to the old kind of Marvel schedule where, you know, there wasn't always something within like a month of the next project so that but also I think for the like, you know, someone who's trying to get into Marvel, I think it will be easier to kind of get into it.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, as somebody that hosts a podcast about Marvel, it is nice to have these breaks occasionally where I'm able to do other fun episodes, like when we did the soccer team one, you know, the starting 11s, stuff like that, where you can do that, or like the comic based ones, because last year was so hot and heavy with these shows. I felt like I'd have like a month, like a month or maybe 3 weeks, and then it was like on to the next show that I'm covering on here. So it was like really hot and heavy in 2022. Because we started off with Moon Knight in March, and then Miss Marvel in May. We had some movies thrown in there. Multiverse of Madness. We had Thor in July. We had Black Panther in November. We had the Werewolf by Night in October. We had She-Hulk. That was 9 weeks, by the way, because it was 9 episodes. Yeah, so that was very like stressful doing the show. But you know, like fun to get the content, but like there's times where I'm like, oh crap, I got like, oh, this show ended, now we're on to the next show. And I think what Disney is ultimately going to want is kind of having some of those gaps, because it makes the hype, like right now, like here is the issue. I think, as somebody that enjoyed getting, I don't know, 19 projects in phase 4 or whatever we got, one thing I liked was getting them, but I think one thing I didn't like was the end credit scenes ultimately would end up either not setting up anything, or they would hint at something, but you didn't have time to live up to that hype yet. You're like, okay, now we got to move on to the next show, which is going to set up something else. So there are still end credit scenes from movies we've gotten and TV shows we've gotten that have ultimately not played a factor at all. So I think that's one thing I was really excited about this end credit scene setting up Loki. I'm like, I know that's this year. Like, that's great. But right now, there is no announcement for Eternals, whatever they're going to call that. And those characters got taken from Earth by a giant celestial. And we have no clue what's going on with that. We don't even know if they're ever going to show up again. They will.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, you know, all of phase 4 kind of happens within a year of each other. That's how I view it. Like in the actual Marvel universe, this is within like a year. And I think it's kind of funny that suddenly we're caught up to that point, you know, because the blip, or
we're almost
2023 is when everyone comes back. So we've kind of caught up to that point.
So if you look at their calendars, they're taking place in 2025 now as well. So we're not exactly caught. I wish they would do
more
that,
caught up than we were.
Slow it down, like to where we catch up.
Yeah. We're
thanks to COVID, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, yeah, that's about all COVID did. In terms of positive things for Marvel, like it just allowed us to catch up from being 5 years behind to being only 2 years behind.
Yeah, you know what's amazing about that too is so Infinity War came out 10 years after Iron Man 1, right? And those 10 years felt like forever.
Mhm.
Okay, it's been 5 years since Infinity War. What the hell has happened to time? It's already been 5 years since Infinity War. That's nuts.
Yeah, I think it's just because the number of projects coming out just been a lot more, and it feels like I'm not sure if it feels longer or shorter actually. It feels weird.
To me it feels shorter. Cuz COVID like feels like yesterday still, and that's been 3 years already. Like since we first shut down. Like that felt like yesterday. And it has been 3 years. That is nuts.
Well, I mean,
so of course then, we had like a whole year where there was no movies, right? 2020 had like nothing. No shows, no movies. So that's part of it too.
the funny thing is, Endgame came out the same like a month before my high school graduation, and in 3 months I graduate from college. So it feels like
That's
it
crazy.
feels like a
Yeah, it's
much
been 4
longer
years
time
already.
for me, I think, just because of that. But I think COVID skewed time
Yeah,
around
well, I'm
everything.
also over 30 now. I'm over 30
Mhm.
now, and it's like once that happens, it goes super fast. God, I'm almost 32 this year. That is scary. Okay. Anything else about Quantumania before we dip out about or move on to maybe some of the reaction of this, because I wanted to share what the cinema score and Rotten Tomatoes stuff is.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I actually have it as number 9 in my MCU rankings. I maybe it's because I'm biased as a massive Ant-Man fan, and I'm willing to accept that if that's the case. But I also thought there was a lot to love about this movie, and I remember a bunch of my friends before this came out, when the review embargo dropped, were saying, "Oh, this movie is going to be terrible." And I tend to not read reviews until after I go in to see a movie. And I went in, I watched it, I came out of the movie, and I was like, this is amazing. I don't see what critics are talking about. I went and read the reviews, and I still don't get what they're talking about. Uh, I think that some of it is, you know, it's definitely a movie that is by its very nature meant to set things up. It's the first movie in the middle phase of the multiverse saga. By its very nature, it's supposed to set things up rather than close things off. But I don't think that means it's mutually exclusive from a good story within it. I think it tells a story about the relationship between Scott and Cassie well. And that's what it needed to do for Ant-Man as a character, while still setting up everything else. One theory that I have with it is film critics want there to be superhero fatigue. I think there's a certain extent of that. Like, and I can see where some people are coming from with that, but I think that with each of these Marvel movies coming out ever since Endgame and Infinity War, it feels like the reception has just been worse and worse. And I feel like it's almost like that those movies actually hurt a lot of the future of Marvel, just because now everyone expects Marvel movies coming out, it's going to be as big as this. But it can't be. Otherwise, it doesn't build up to anything, right? If every movie was like Infinity War and Endgame, there's no build up to anything else, right? So I think people are expecting too much with this. I've said that before. We said it when we talked about Multiverse of Madness. I think, if you kept your expectations in check and like thought critically and said, this may have Kang in it, this may set up a bunch of other stuff for the future, it is still an Ant-Man movie. It is going to be goofy. It is going to be it's not going to have the biggest stakes in the world necessarily. And I think if you go in with those kinds of expectations, you enjoy the movie a lot more than the people who went in thinking this is going to be like a massive, massive turning point for everything. That's my thinking about it.
So my thought on it is, look, to give you some. All right, the Rotten Tomato meter is at 48%. All right, that's after 294 reviews. That is second lowest. The lowest is Eternals. And here's what I'm going to say to that. Neither of those are the worst two movies in the MCU. All right? That's Thor the Dark World. That's like, for me, like Dark World is bottom. Incredible Hulk is near bottom. Now, I do think some of it is, reviewers have to go see every single movie. So now they're getting tired of it. I think that's part of it. Another part of it is when you have, I think there was more leeway before Endgame and Infinity War because nothing like this had ever been done. So I think some critics were like, oh, that was surprisingly like, oh, they're building this. Oh, this is cool. This is a good movie, whatever. Like, blah, blah, blah. Then you hit the heights of Infinity War and Endgame, which shows what Marvel can do. And then they were like expecting that all the time. Or part of it is definitely the loss of Robert Downey Jr. and not critically wise, but fan wise. People really loved Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. I understand that. I get that. But I am more invested into the whole universe than just those two characters. So anybody saying we need to bring them back somehow, you would then complain about there not being any stakes, right? Those characters are gone. Good. Now they might come back as variants at some point. That's all they should ever do. So that's all it should be. Should never come back fully. So that's part of it, I think, for sure. Now, the part that I don't get also is the fan reaction. So Rotten Tomatoes audience scores at 84%. That's okay for a superhero movie. All right, Eternals was 77. 84% is actually lower than Black Adam's audience score as well. I'm not sure how many people verified ratings on Black Adam, probably around the same amount or more at this point. That movie didn't do too well. So when we're projecting at how this movie is going to do financially, because here's the problem I do think we have. They've said they want to do an Ant-Man 4, and they want to do a smaller scale version of it, like another, not a huge event like this. If this movie doesn't do well financially, I don't know if we get a fourth Ant-Man. And if we do, it will be a very small stakes story, which is probably fine. But it's not gonna, like, he's not gonna be the star of like a big event like this again. They're gonna learn a lesson from that, because these movies always did lower financially, and if this one does do lower financially than even Ant-Man and the Wasp, which is a possibility when you look at long term, before it hits DVD. Not the weekend, but the whole box office run. Then I think they'll be like, because I think this movie probably costs $200 million or more. The other Ant-Man movies cost considerably less money. So if we do get a fourth one, it'll be small stakes. It'll be smaller budget. No pun intended for Ant-Man, by the way. And then we will, like, they'll be able to make money off of those again. So for people that don't understand cinema score, I'm going to explain this to you here. I put a tweet out yesterday as well, last night, but it got a B, which many people would say a B, that's really good. Well, when it comes to cinema score, that's not very good. All right. So when it comes to superhero movies, a B is really bad. So the cinema score people, I don't know who they are. All right. They've run this website. Well, they didn't run the website, but they've done this thing since 1978. All right. And they're very accurate for predicting the legs a movie is going to have. So they always go out the day of the movie releasing, like Thursday and Friday, and they interview people as soon as they step out of the movie. And the reason why that matters a lot for superhero movies is because the diehard fans always go the first day or two, compared to other movies where they're not franchises. So that's why this matters more to superhero movies as having a lower score. So the consensus is if they are low on a movie, that's bad because these are the diehards. These are the people that should be ranking these movies higher. So that's why they usually look at it this way. Now, I'm going to probably tell on myself here because this movie got a B. That's the lowest that an MCU film has gotten. That's tied with Eternals. Most of Phase 4 has had a B+, which also was unheard of after, like, before Endgame came out. I think only one movie had a B+, and I think it was
Dark World?
Incredible Hulk.
Okay.
I think Dark World got an A-. I can check. Hold on.
That's a crime. That's a
Dark
crime.
World,
If Dark World has a high.
Okay, Thor 1 got a B+, Dark World got an A-.
That's a crime. That's a crime.
Okay. I probably was part of that. I really liked Dark World when I first saw it, and then after that I was like, I cannot watch this movie ever again. So B is not great. Other movies that gotten a B, all right, and this is where I'm telling on myself here, okay? Got Batman vs. Superman, Green Lantern, and Fantastic Four 2005, which
is not a terrible movie.
I like all three of those.
I think
so. I like all three of those that I just listed. So now I like them at varying successes, right? Like BVS is not in my top. I would rank this movie way ahead of that one. But so hey, maybe I'm part of the problem. Maybe I'm, I don't know. The good news, we didn't get a C or C+. Those are like almost franchise killers. I'm going to name 2 superhero movies that have C's, and that is Batman and Robin from 1997, which killed the Batman franchise until 8 years later. And Fantastic Four 2015. Which killed the Fantastic Four franchise.
Yep. That I will say, I think the Fantastic Four 2015 is the only movie I've walked out of the movie theater and was like, I did not enjoy that at all.
I've still not watched it. I said I'm not going to watch
it. It's better if you're a Fantastic Four fan to not.
I'm waiting for Marvels instead at this point. But yeah, so not that a C would kill the MCU. I'm saying that would probably kill all chances of an Ant-Man 4 if it was a C. I think there is still a chance we get Ant-Man 4 with a smaller budget, smaller scale, and it, maybe passing the torch to Cassie officially or something. I don't know. But that's the future of Ant-Man right now. It's not, unfortunately, going to be probably a cornerstone franchise at this point. Now, of course, what else that got a B. A B+ was Multiverse of Madness, which still almost got $1 billion. This movie's not going to get close to that, I don't think, but it can still have a successful run. The reason why we're worried about a B is that most movies that get a B, its legs get cut considerably short because then the word of mouth is not super great, and then less people go see it. They'll say, I'll wait until Disney Plus. I'll see it later. And Eternals, by the way, was like the most streamed MCU film in 2022. And that's probably part of the reason is because it got a B and people stayed away. And then people just caught up on it on Disney Plus later. So that's where we're at with Ant-Man right now. Which sucks because I really liked it, but oh well.
I still think like the trend of like those cinema scores going kind of down has just been the expectations of these diehard fans getting too high. I maintain
Could
that.
be.
I maintain that. I think that after Infinity War Endgame, everyone was like, "Oh my god, they're gonna keep going up from here," but you can't. Otherwise, you know, I enjoy the rebuilding part of it. I think Phase 4 is the best phase that Marvel made. I think it's my favorite, at least. I really, really enjoyed the stories that it told, the characters it introduced. I thought it was great. It has like some of my favorite movies and projects in there. I think it makes up like 4 or 5 out of my top 10 in the MCU from Phase 4. I think it's great. And so maybe it's because I kept my expectations in check a little bit and knew exactly from like after this, like, it's not going to be like this every time. This is like an event that has been building up to. That's how it should be treated. That's what Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars are going to be like. And I can guarantee that if they just kept that same level for all of these movies up until then those last two movies, those Avengers movies, wouldn't feel special. They would just feel like another one of these movies in the multiverse saga. They have to build up to it. They have to set all the pieces in motion. And all of the only reason Infinity War and Endgame work so well is because they did all of these movies in like phase 1 and 2, did a bunch of heavy lifting to get characters in the right places for things. That's Ant-Man and the Wasp. Quantumania does that for Scott and for Cassie, right? It gets Scott out of this like retirement mode and back into this idea. It gets the Council of Kangs involved in all of this, and starts to get us moving towards Kang Dynasty. I think it's doing that heavy lifting, and it gets underrated because of that. And you know, I think that's unfortunate, because I think if you go into this movie and you're like, I'm going to have a fun time watching an Ant-Man movie that's going to be funny, it's going to be a little goofy, it's going to be weird and zany because it's in the quantum realm, then you get like what our reaction was, right? Where you really like, you like it or love
Right.
it. If you go in expecting this is going to give us all the answers for the future of the MCU, you're not going to enjoy it as much, because it's going to set some things up. But if it gives you all the answers, why do you come back for the next movie? That's my thoughts on it.
And I don't even know what I don't even know what answers people want anyway. It's like we kind of know where we're heading
Exactly.
now, so I I don't really get that, but phase 4 as a whole for me, I dug most of it. I don't think there hasn't been anything Marvel's put out that I've like actively hated. Even like the Dark World, I can tolerate it. It's not like I hate it, and I don't understand when people have to go like online and just express their hate all the time either, because if I don't like a movie, I like stop thinking about it because I don't want to think about it anymore, you know, because I hated it. So I don't get when people like harp on stuff that much, but you know, some people get their kicks out of that, I guess. But I think what people have forgotten, what phase 3 did, has made people totally forgot about phase 1 and phase 2, which were not all hits financially, and they were all not hits critically, or I guess reception wise. I remember people saying Thor wasn't great. I remember people saying First Avenger wasn't great. You know, Cap. I enjoyed both of those movies. What happened is it got catapulted into a whole nother stratosphere once Avengers released. There's a reason Kevin Feige now, like you said, for Avenger films, has made them the end of sagas, is because he doesn't want another Age of Ultron. Because guess what? Age of Ultron got shredded because it was mostly a film that people say set stuff up. It did. But it also was mostly a standalone Avengers movie that did not have to play a part with the Thanos stuff. And people at that point were wondering where we were heading. So it's almost like the same sort of thing. You know, and then, and part of it too is why people soured on Age of Ultron. 2014 October 28th, they announced, I know that date because I got in a car accident that day.
Oof.
They were, I got home and got to read all the news. But, they did this whole press event where they announced all of the movies through Endgame. They didn't name it Endgame. They called it Infinity War Part 2. That was 2014. So 2015, Age of Ultron comes out. It's mostly standalone and doesn't build that stuff up. And people are like, well, we're building up to Thanos. Why didn't we get any sort of thing with that? And it mostly was part of the same issue that we're getting with Phase 4 films. And especially when people complain that not all of the multiverse saga has had to deal with the multiverse yet, go and watch a random Phase 1 or Phase 2 movie where we did not know Thanos was the villain, and it does not tie in at all. It is a standalone adventure with some setup. We didn't even know we were getting Infinity Stones until we saw the Infinity Gauntlet. There's other Thanos storylines. When we see Thanos at the end of Avengers, it does not mean it's going to be Infinity Stones. That's what people kind of started thinking it was going to build up to. But we didn't hear the word Infinity Stones until, Guardians?
Yeah, I think Guardians, yeah.
Maybe?
I think that's the first time.
That may have been.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of Phase 2 movies don't have to do with the Infinity Stones. Like most of them actually don't have to do with Infinity Stones. Like just going through Phase 1 and 2. Iron Man? No. Iron Man 2? No. Thor? Kind of. First Avenger? Kind of. Avengers? Yeah.
The Tesseract.
The Tesseract. Yep. It's all the Tesseract. All of the stone. It's all the same Infinity Stone in Phase 1. Phase 2, Iron Man 3, no. Thor: The Dark World, yes. The Winter Soldier, no. Guardians, yes. Age of Ultron, no. Ant-Man, no. There's no Infinity Stones in there. It's not until Phase 3.
That's the first 2 phases.
Yep. And then Phase 3, not even the first movie in that because that's Civil War. But then we get to Doctor Strange and we get the Time Stone. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, I think has a little bit of that. Ragnarok doesn't really talk about the stones at all. Right? Or maybe a little bit. Black Panther doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, people started thinking that the heart-shaped herb was going to be the Soul Stone or something, because of how it brings you to your ancestors and stuff like that. So that was one thing that people were thinking. But yeah, I mean, if you read them out loud, and guess what? Most of these got retconned. The Tesseract was not the Space Stone. That was the Cosmic Cube. They even dropped the name Cosmic Cube, which was another artifact in comics. Then the Mind Stone being inside Loki's scepter was a total retcon. That was not what that was supposed to be until Age of Ultron made that happen, right? And give it to Vision. So people have kind of got rose-colored glasses on because they know the whole story now, and because it was the first time it was ever happening, and now people think they know how it should go, and they're thinking we're going too slow, but we're not. We're going pretty much how they went last time.
And do you know what's funny though? After Black Panther, the next movie's Infinity War, and then we find out about more of these stones for like we find out about the Soul Stone for the first time in this movie. Like this is the first time we get that. Time Stone we knew about before. Space Stone, yes. Reality Stone, yes. Mind Stone, yes. But Soul Stone, and I'm missing one other one. I cannot think of the 6th stone for the life of me.
The Mind? Did you got the Mind?
No, I got. Is it Power?
Power, yeah, that's the
I guess that's in Guardians
Xandar.
of the Galaxy, yeah.
And
so.
we didn't even get to see that, like him get it.
Yeah.
He just already has it at the beginning of Infinity War as well. So, I think we're moving at a good pace. I think we're fine. I think the only thing that might change is when these movies come out. Also, another thing, out of the 4 MCU films that are not certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes and have also gotten a B+ or worse on CinemaScore, are 4 out of their last 6 movies. That's kind of worrying if you're Kevin Feige, and that's why you want to probably slow down as well. Those are Eternals, Multiverse of Madness, Love and Thunder, and Quantumania, which all have that stipulation of not being certified fresh and having a B+ or worse on CinemaScore. Which, if you're James Gunn, perfect time to take charge of DC and have a real chance at creating competition. And competition will be great for both sides because that means the MCU is no longer the top dog. They have to do something. They have to, I'll never take I'll never be upset with getting a better film. So even if I like these movies and I love some of these movies that have come out since Endgame, if they can be even better because of the competition from James Gunn's DC universe, then that's a win. And I think that'll be really interesting to see. I just hope that. Look, here's another thing Marvel has up their sleeve. They got Fantastic Four yet to join, and they got the X-Men yet to join, which are like
staples,
huge name recognitions. Yeah, that they'll be able to, if they make good movies, right, and they have good word of mouth, where people all of a sudden be like, "Oh my God, the MCU is back on track because we got Wolverine, we've got Professor Xavier, we got
the Thing,
Reed Richards, Yeah, the Thing,
but not
the Thing versus Hulk.
Yeah.
We need that in live action,
but not Michael Chiklis.
Oh, I like.
I know, I'm kidding. I would like to see it. I know I don't want every past Marvel character to come through in like Secret Wars, but I would kind of like to see that original Fantastic Four cast come through, because I think it would be funny as well if it was Chris Evans and then a character remarks like, "Haven't I seen you before?"
Yeah,
like I would love it. I would love it so much.
Yes, that would be great. And I really wish, and I'm gonna say this here again, I really wish that John Krasinski, Mr. Fantastic, was the Mr. Fantastic from the 2005 films. I think that would have hit a lot better than just like, oh, we did a fun fan cast thing. Like, it would have been really cool to have because you got Professor Xavier from the X-Men films, even though it's a different universe. But, we got the same actor there, Patrick Stewart. It would have been cool to just see, the Mr. Fantastic I grew up with sitting there too. All right. So I guess that wraps us up here. If you want to give us a follow for all things Marvel or MCU, you can reach us at TO Infinity Saga on Twitter. The rest of our links are in the show notes. I don't have it pulled up here, and they are all different on each platform, so I do not remember that off the top of my head. I know Instagram for sure is To the Infinity Saga and Beyond, I think is what the Instagram is. But yeah, thank you all for watching or listening. Have a great rest of your week, and I guess we'll catch you next time, which I'll try to do another episode soon about something. We'll find out. We don't know when Secret Invasion's coming out, and then Guardians is May, so we have a huge gap right now for me to come up with some cool episodes. So I'll be back soon for sure.